right here in South Carolina. Take a look. Mr. Trump, poll numbers, Fox came out today. You're at 32%, consistent with all the other polls that have been out there. Are you feeling confident going into Saturday?
Well, I do. I mean, we're going to see what happens. I'll tell you what, South Carolina is an incredible place. I've been here many, many times. I have many friends here long before the political stuff. And I feel very good. I mean, we feel very confident. I'm making 4 or 5 speeches today and tomorrow.
And you have the biggest crowds.
I have the biggest crowds.
It was interesting because you kind of a little bit underperformed in Iowa, way overperformed in New Hampshire. The poll numbers here look very similar to New Hampshire. Are you expecting a similar result?
Well, I think I really performed well in Iowa. You know, in terms of going in, they went in. This caucus thing is crazy. They went in and they all said they're voting for Trump, and then people would do numbers on them inside, and there was a very crooked deal going on there. I'll tell you what, that whole Iowa thing was terrible with Ted Cruz, what he did with Ben Carson, etc. But I think we really did well in Iowa. Picked up a lot of delegates, came in a very strong second, but we did really well in New Hampshire. And New Hampshire was so incredible to us. We won in a landslide, and we won with every single group. And this feels very much like New Hampshire.
All right, I'm going to get back to the horse race in a minute. Let me go to the main attack line that is being used against you.
Okay.
You're not a conservative.
Okay, well, I am a conservative.
Explain.
If you look at me and if you look at any kind of a record you want to look at, I'm by far the strongest on military. I'm by far the strongest of any candidate on Second Amendment. I'm by far the strongest on getting rid of Common Core and bringing the education to a local so that local people can educate the kids, which is 10 times better. You look at where we stand worldwide education, it's a horror show. We're number 30 in the world.
We spend the most money.
So we get rid of, absolutely, we get rid of Common Core 100%. I'm the strongest on Obamacare. I've been talking to you about Obamacare from the day they proposed it. I said, you got to get rid of it. It's going to be a disaster. And I know because they have thousands of employees. And over the years, I've had tens of thousands of employees. So I understand more about health care than anybody. We have to get rid of Obamacare. We're going to repeal it and replace it. I mean, I'm the most conservative. Oh, by the way, on trade, there's nobody more conservative than me. I will make great trade deals.
Let me go to the heart of the
argument. We have the world's worst trade deals, by the way, just so you know.
I agree, and it would certainly help economic growth. I guess for some people, they say, okay, well, Donald Trump was a New York businessman and he was liberal then. Explain how you became a conservative. Maybe that would help some people understand.
Right. Well, first of all, as a businessman, it wasn't like you were liberal. You were sort of like nothing. You didn't talk about these things. You didn't talk about pro-choice. You didn't talk about you are in favor or not in favor of abortion. You didn't. I mean, it wasn't like, you know, you're building buildings and you're dealing with contractors and you're dealing with tough people and you're doing things and you're dealing with politicians. But you weren't in the world of politics, and you never were asked. I mean, they talk about pro-choice, which I am not. You know, I've totally evolved on that whole thing. But it was something you never talked about. You didn't talk about borders. You didn't talk about all of these things. Now, on many of these subjects, and on most of these subjects, I think, you know, you mentioned the word conservative. I like to say I'm a conservative with common sense, or I'm a common sense conservative. And it's a term nobody's ever heard before because I just came up with it about 2 days ago. Because some of these things that these people come up with are crazy. But I'm the most conservative when it comes to military, when it comes to the border, when it comes to security. That's why every poll you people do, I come out number one by, not by like 2 points. I come out number one where I'm in the 60s and 70 percentages. And when it comes to security, when it comes to illegal immigration, all of these things, I think I'm the most conservative person there is.
So then why the attacks about, well, he used to be? Is it just because that's the only line of attack that they have?
Ronald Reagan, okay, so I'm pro-life.
Right.
Okay, and you know that. I've done
you told the story in the first debate.
I did, and I told the story, and I don't know if I have to tell the story again now, but I mean, I've seen things, and I'm pro-life. And people know I'm pro-life. But Ronald Reagan, you know, was pro-choice. And Ronald Reagan passed an abortion law in California that was one of the worst in the country. I mean, it was a terrible thing. And he became president, became a great president. But he was actually a somewhat liberal Democrat, and he ended up being a somewhat conservative.
Very good.
He wasn't very conservative, but he was back there. But more importantly, he ended up being a great president.
So you're going to build a wall. That's conservative. Can you balance a budget? Do you believe it's possible?
Oh, absolutely.
We have $20 trillion in debt.
I even like your penny plan. You know, I'm a very sophisticated guy, and I went to the best business school in the world with Wharton, and all of that stuff. I like your penny plan. I mean, and you could do more than a penny.
People may not know. The penny plan is, and it's not mine, it was Connie Mack, I got to give him credit, cut a penny out of every dollar every year for 6 years, you balance the budget. You would add...
Well, if you had the right people leading your agencies and leading your different groups, you could do that. I mean,
waste, fraud, and abuse.
Like that, or you could do it it quicker. You know, some of these politicians think you can't balance the budget. Some of them think it's going to take 25 years. You've had them on your show where they say, we think over a 25-year period we can get the budget. But now, you know, that's not going to happen.
We always get the promise that we're going to get lower spending and higher taxes. You get the taxes, you don't get the spending. You get amnesty, you never get the wall. So
Sean, I've seen politicians on your show that you are for, and they're getting ready to go to Washington for the first time, and they're going to get rid of Obamacare, and they're going to do this and that, all these things that you have to do. They're going to balance the budget.
Doesn't happen.
A year later, you have them in your show, they haven't done anything.
Yeah.
They talk.
Listen, I'm not even sure that they'll hold the line on the position that they've taken on Justice Scalia's
Can I tell you what? I
replacement.
saw it yesterday. So the first is like the Republicans. Don't forget, Obama's a horrible negotiator. Worst deal I've ever seen in Iran. He's a terrible negotiator, except when it comes to the Republicans. And I saw it yesterday, Sean. So Scalia, great guy, dies, right? And the Republicans say, we don't want, and they're all very brave, and we have the right, and we have the Senate, and we're not going to give you any vote. Okay, everything that they're supposed to be saying, they're saying. Then yesterday I heard, there may be some weakening in the Republicans.
I saw the knees buckling.
No.
I saw the same thing.
I saw it for the first time.
Yeah.
In other words, a day goes by, all of a sudden, I'm telling you, these people need a strong leader.
Yeah.
These people are weak.
So let's talk about spending
Don't be
less.
surprised if
spending
some
less
bad
is
things
important to
happen.
you. You want to eliminate baseline budgeting.
Absolutely.
Cut waste, fraud, and abuse.
Right.
How important is lowering taxes for economic growth?
I have my policy, and I have the biggest tax cut there is of all of them. We have a tax cut for the middle class. We have a tax cut for business. Our middle class, we're paying the highest taxes in the world, Sean. We are paying, in this country, the highest taxes in the world. So I have big tax cuts for the middle class. You know, the country has forgotten about the middle class. They really built our country.
Shrinking.
No, they built our country.
They're suffering.
And they're paying too much tax. We're cutting taxes for the middle class. We're cutting taxes for business. We're cutting tax so we can bring our $2.5 trillion back into the country. Right
the
now,
repatriated money, the trillions that are
corporate inversion. I mean, you look at what's going on with corporations where Pfizer is leaving this country. How about where a Chinese company is buying the Chicago Stock Exchange? Okay.
Well, you saw what happened with the Carrier
Is leaving. They're going to Mexico.
Into Mexico.
And I know how to stop that.
So you'll repatriate that, give them an incentive to bring that money back, build manufacturing centers, factories here.
We want that $2.5 trillion here. You know, the interesting thing is the Democrats want it to happen and the Republicans want it to happen, but we have no leader, so they can't. I could sit them in a room there, and within 2 minutes, you'd have that deal worked out. But we have no leader. We have a president that doesn't lead. Everybody wants the money to come back, even the Democrats. But we have no leader to sit them in a room and say, come on, let's get it done. You need a quick signing.
I've asked you at least 3 or 4 times about your replacement for Obamacare, and for some reason the press never picks up on your answer.
Well, I talk healthcare savings. You know, you look at healthcare
savings accounts.
You look at getting rid of the lines. I've been talking to you about that a lot. We have to get rid of the lines.
In other words, buying across state lines.
Absolutely. There's no competition. And you know why? Because all of the politicians that you have on your show all the time are paid off by the insurance companies. That's all. It's very simple. Meaning campaign contributions.
Yeah.
As much as you like them, they get campaign contributions.
I don't give money to any of them.
They're on your show. No, I know.
They don't get any money.
But they're on your show.
Yeah.
And the truth is, they get tremendous campaign contributions from the insurance companies. They're making a fortune. Obama got taken care of by the insurance companies. Obamacare is a windfall for many insurance companies.
Well, it's also forcing young people to buy plans they don't need.
Oh, it's sad.
And with a healthcare savings account, you can get a high deductible, 100%. Catastrophic care, and you're paying 4 times less.
It's great. But you have to get rid of the lines so you have competition also.
And you can take a portability job to job.
Portability is very important.
All right. What about, you said education. You would take the entire Department of Education and take the money that we're spending federally on education and give that money to cities and states?
Absolutely. And they have, look, and they can do it with real love and with heart. You got to bring education. If we were doing well in education, I'd say fine. We're ranked number 30 in the world. You have China, Denmark, Sweden, Norway. These countries are all the best countries, right? We're ranked number. We pay per pupil so many times more than number 2. Number 2 doesn't even exist. We pay so much more per pupil. Department of Education is a disaster. We have to get rid of Common Core, bring education local.
I asked you earlier in the week who you would like to replace or the type of justice you're looking for in the Supreme Court. A lot of people have said, well, you cited your sister, who took a very controversial...
I cited my sister jokingly because I had a conflict, obviously. I said, oh, I think my sister, and I did it with a big laugh on my face that I'm having fun. I have a great sister, who, by the way, is totally brilliant and a wonderful woman, but I have a conflict. So I said, oh, I'll put my sister. That's the way I did it. I didn't say my sister. My sister wouldn't want it. My sister wouldn't do it.
Your two favorite justices on the court now?
Well, Scalia was one, and I'll tell you something. I think a man who's so underrated and he's so solid is Justice Thomas.
I agree with you.
He doesn't get enough credit. He's been a rock just about more than any of them.
Did you ever read his book, My Grandfather's Son?
I've seen the book. I have not read the book.
Really good book.
I'll look at it.
All right. You talk about...
Do you agree with that, though?
Yes, I think...
He doesn't get enough credit.
Very different personality than Scalia. Scalia jokes, makes a lot of comments.
Like the opposite personality.
You know, biting dissents and opinions.
But he's been a rock.
But very solid originalist. So you're looking for an originalist?
Yes, I am.
And coming up, part 2 of our interview with 2016 GOP frontrunner Donald Trump. Then later tonight.
If and when the Vatican is attacked by ISIS, which, as everyone knows, is ISIS's ultimate trophy, I can promise you that the Pope would have only wished and prayed that Donald Trump would have been president.
And here's part 2 of our interview from earlier today with 2016 Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. Let me go to the issue of a comment you made last night. We're talking about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Toughest deal to make of any kind of deal that I've ever seen is Israel-Palestine.
Because it's such a
toughest deal. The Palestinians and the Israelis they're not exactly meshing.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the reasons, and I said it last night, the toughest single deal to make is getting them together. And I've been told by some Israelis that no matter who it is, you'll never do it. I'm going to give it a shot. But I will say, it is probably of all the deals, right?
Well, you did mention that these kids that are funded by Hamas and Hezbollah.
They grow up hating.
They're growing up to hate
That's why
Israel.
It's so tough. They grow up hating. They grow up, things were told to me that are incredible, and I won't even say
How important, though, is our alliance? They're our number one ally in the region, and that alliance has been, well, fractured in a big way.
Israel is so important. What Obama has done to Israel is a disgrace. How they even talk to us is hard to believe. But Israel, and how they talk to Obama. You know, I have friends, they support Obama. I said, how do you do it? It's almost like they do it out of habit. They agree he's been terrible. You look at what he's done to Israel with just this Iran deal, which is such a terrible deal. He has been the worst thing that's ever happened to Israel. Now, a lot of my friends that are Jewish do not support him any longer, but I still have some that do. I say, how can you do it?
He's been horrible to Israel.
You know what? I think it's habit. They do it out of habit.
What do you think of Prime Minister Netanyahu?
I think he's good, and I like him.
Strong?
He's always been strong. He's always been good to me. He asked me to do a commercial for him. I was his only celebrity that he asked to do a commercial.
Right?
He said, would you do a commercial when he ran for office? But I think he's very good. I think he's been treated very, very badly by Obama.
Let me get you to expand. You always talk about trade, free trade. You say you're free trade. You want fair trade.
Well, I want it to be smart trade. It's got to be smart.
But not protectionist.
No, not protectionist. But you have to use that as a
leverage.
Of course.
It's a negotiation.
We don't use anything. Hey, look, we let China dump their stuff on us, but if you try and do business in China, you can't. I mean, it's impossible. You can't get your stuff in. It's very hard.
Right.
You can't get your stuff in. And you have to pay tax. So it's got to be equal. It's not equal. And we're losing $500 billion this year.
And a trade deficit with China.
We have a trade deficit with China with $500 billion. I'm going to negotiate. Believe me, we're not going to lose that
U.S.
kind of
cars
money.
sold in China.
I want, yes, and I want them made here and sold in China.
Exactly.
Like Boeing. Boeing goes and takes an order. Now they have to build airplane factories in China. And be careful, South Carolina and other places, and Seattle, by the way.
They're going to lose factories and manufacturing
eventually, in 5 years, they'll start doing their monetary manipulation against China. Nobody has ever manipulated a currency. They're like chess grandmasters, okay?
Yeah.
Nobody's ever done it like China. And I told the folks last night, right here, I said, be careful of your Boeing plant because you think it's good now, but in 3 years when the ones are built, the big ones in China, and the currency manipulation takes place, South Carolina's going to have a problem.
Look how bad the economy is when you talk about banks now charging you to keep your money.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's opposite.
Let me ask you this. You actually said something that really intrigued me. There's still 28 pages of the 9/11 Commission report that have never been revealed.
Right, and they should reveal it.
I got the impression that you knew something maybe we don't know. about the Saudis
I think you will
involvement?
find out when that's opened. I think you're going to find out that Saudi Arabia had a lot to do with the ripping down of the
Would
World
you
Trade
open
Center.
that if you became president?
I would open it, yeah.
You would. Let the American people
What
know.
I'm saying, and look, we attacked Iraq.
Yeah.
But Iraq didn't knock down the World Trade Center. When you open up those pages, you're going to find out who did.
That's pretty interesting. I played a tape for you on my radio show the other day. Bill Clinton gave a speech. He'd been offered bin Laden, knew bin Laden was a threat.
Should have taken him out.
Should have taken him out.
Should have taken him out.
And also, even though you were against the war, and you and I had some debates at the time, you were against the war from the beginning.
Totally against the war. And you would know that because you and I have been doing this for a long time.
Well, we
I was
just
against,
disagree.
And you and I used to fight about it.
We used to fight
now
about
you
it.
probably say Trump was sort of like right.
You know,
not sort of right.
Well, the thing is,
100%
once we go to war, what I'm afraid of is we lose 58,000 people in Vietnam, we lose 5,000 people in Iraq, and then Obama politicizes it, or they politicize Vietnam. And why did we send American sons and daughters to fight, bleed, and die, and then we only give Ramadi, Fallujah, Mosul, and Tikrit over to ISIS?
Look,
that's insanity.
We shouldn't have gone into Iraq because we destabilized the Middle East. Okay, once we're in,
You win.
The way we got out was horrible. You win, you're right. But the way we got out was horrible, where he announces a date, and now the enemy pulls back. They say, why should we fight? You know, despite what you hear, they don't want to die. They say, why should we fight? We get out, and the mess starts. But we should have left troops. I didn't want to go in, but we should have left troops there.
And sustain the victories we
should
had.
have done something.
And I do agree with you about keeping the oil and giving the money to the
I've been saying
military.
it for 4 years.
Why are we paying the cost?
Now
That's
ISIS
crazy.
is so rich, and also paying the cost for all of these armies that we're supporting. I mean, Saudi Arabia, so rich, making $1 billion a day before the oil went down, so now they're making half, right?
I was glad to hear you say the other day, there were only 3 people that were waterboarded totally. One was Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who gave the information about the courier that led to bin Laden.
Right.
Unknown
Right.
story,
Right.
it seems, by a lot of people. And I always use the analogy, if you saw your child getting kidnapped by 3 people and you tackled one of the 3 and 2 people got away with your child, what wouldn't you do to get the information? You said you would go further. Explain.
This came up with Ted Cruz. They asked him a question about waterboarding. You know, is it good? Is it fine? Is it okay? And he was very weak on his answer. It was a bad answer. And I could see he didn't know. He wanted to stay away from it. He didn't like it. I mean, I understand that. He didn't like it. Then they said, what would you do? I said, I'd approve it immediately and I'd make it worse. Okay?
In other words, whatever it took to get
whatever
information.
it took. Excuse me. And I preface it by saying, in the Middle East, they're chopping off heads. I haven't seen that since medieval times. I read when I was a young guy in history class, I would read about medieval times. They chopped off heads. Now, James Foley, these wonderful people. I know his parents. They're incredible people. They're chopping off heads.
Scary.
Okay?
That's evil in our time.
And here we are. They're chopping off heads, and we want information about them, and we can't waterboard, okay? We can't waterboard, no. So when they came to me, by the way, it was very interesting. They came to me, they asked me the same question. I said, I'd approve it immediately, but it's got to be worse. And I got a standing ovation. I didn't know what I was going to get. You know, I didn't exactly poll it. I don't poll things.
You don't
like
poll.
these other
You don't have
people.
pollsters at all.
No, I do what's right.
What's your reaction to Obama saying Donald Trump won't be president? I don't believe he'll be president.
Well, I was complimented. He's been the worst president in the history of our country. I was complimented, and I actually said it's lucky that I didn't run 4 years ago because unfortunately Romney didn't take us to the promised land. It didn't work out for Romney. But I said you're lucky I didn't run 4 years ago because you wouldn't be a 2-term president, and I really mean that. I think I would have. You remember when I was thinking about running, and I was number 1 in all the polls and everything. But I was very busy. I had many, many jobs going up all over the world, and I had my children that were sort of young and learning, and well, now they're in great shape. Ivanka, Don, Eric, and I have great executives, so it doesn't matter.
Conservatives were concerned in the debate about, you said, about Planned Parenthood. They do good things for women. I just don't like the abortion side. Here's my question.
That's what I say. It's true.
Should American taxpayers, though, pay $500 billion to that organization
No, I
a
said
year?
defund. I didn't say pay.
Yeah.
I said I have a lot of respect for some of the things. They do the cervical cancer on women. They do many, many good things. I know many women that
no
think it's
taxpayer
great.
money.
No, not while they do abortions. I made that clear. I made that clear, I think, at the debate.
All right, last question. Things are getting heated. It always happens historically in South Carolina. You threatened a lawsuit with Cruz. Where does that stand?
Well, we'll see. I mean, look, I have a couple of them in theory. Look, was he born? He was born in Canada. He lived there for 4 years. He was a citizen of Canada until 15 months ago.
You're not going to file that lawsuit, will you?
I'll have to get your approval, okay?
Mr. Trump, good to see you. Thank you.
very
Appreciate it.
much.
Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
sir.